Hi everyone, this is my final persuasive speech. These are the people I have present. This is my wife Shandon, my co-workers Joe and Leslie and Mike. So thank you guys for being here, and without further ado, we will continue. Can you tell me what these people have in common? John F. Kennedy, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, and Barack Obama. More than likely you said that they've all served as the President of the United States, and you would obviously be correct. However, you'd also be correct if you said that all four men have experimented with this, marijuana. There's also a number of other influential Americans who have used marijuana in our history, to include Bill Gates, Oprah Winfrey, Michael Phelps, and Maya Angelou. So, to conclude, we have 4 U.S. presidents, 2 of the wealthiest and most successful Americans in our history, an 18-time Olympic gold medalist, and a civil rights leader and celebrated poet. I would continue to list off names of influential Americans who have used marijuana in the past, but I only have 10 minutes, so let's get to the truth about marijuana use in this country and the outdated laws and policies that we are currently living with. I believe that the benefits of legalizing marijuana far outweigh the negative aspects, and that it is in our best interest as the American people to support legalization. I want to show you a quick video put on by the Huffington Post. It's about 50 seconds long that talks about some of the positive aspects of legalizing marijuana in this country.
But revenue collection actually increases money for taxes, and those can go towards schools and other programs. And in fact, revenues from taxes on pot in Colorado could reach up to $70 million per year. And perhaps it could also help people who are drinking a little too much. Researchers have found that people either like to drink or they like to smoke, but not to do both. It could even help with drinking and driving. While driving while stoned isn't exactly street legal, you are much less likely to be involved in a traffic accident than if you are drunk. And yes, it could even create jobs. Think about all the jobs at the dispensaries, the packaging places, even the ad agencies. And if pot's legal, we can stop arresting so many people. According to the FBI, 1 marijuana arrest is made every 42 seconds. And it's you, the taxpayers, that then have to pay for them to be put in jail, and that is just crazy. So once it's legal, the internet...
All right, so obviously that's a lot of positive aspects to legalizing marijuana. I'm not going to sit here, however, and claim that marijuana is good for you or try and glorify it. There are many negative aspects to marijuana. Some of those include it being a lung irritant when smoked and can possibly even contribute to lung cancer. It raises your heart rate 20 to 100% immediately after smoking, which would obviously be a concern for someone with a heart issue. It also can provide an effect on your long and short-term memory if you're a regular user. And there are even studies out there that show that marijuana may contribute to mental illness such as anxiety and even in some cases depression. Now, if these are the only thing that people who oppose the legalization of marijuana use as their reason, I would argue that all of those things I just listed are also caused by smoking and alcohol, which are both perfectly legal in this country. Every year, according to CDC.gov, 480,000 Americans die from lung cancer caused from smoking cigarettes. Another 88,000 die from alcohol poisoning. That's 568,000 Americans that die every year as a direct result of smoking and alcohol. That's not even taking into consideration people who die from cancer caused by smokeless tobacco, alcohol, and drunk driving accidents. Now, I believe that it is contradictory and illogical for our government to allow the sale of cigarettes and alcohol, while laws written out of fear and misunderstanding cause more and more Americans to get locked up every year on marijuana-related charges. This brings me to my next point: the devastating effect that the war on drugs has had on us as Americans, especially our legal and our prison system. Now, according to CountTheCost.org, and I quote, "The overarching aim of the war on drugs is to eliminate or significantly reduce the availability and use of illegal drugs. Yet despite decades of growing enforcement budgets, each year we are further from the aspirational goal of a drug-free world. Instead, drug markets have expanded and the use has continued to rise." Excuse me. Now, according to drugsense.com, our government spends in excess of $40 billion a year on the war on drugs. This is a war that we are losing, people. According to CBSNews.com, we are still the #1 country on earth in the use of illegal drugs. Now, just as Prohibition failed in the 1920s and 30s, our misguided war on marijuana is failing. Well, what do we get as the American taxpayer for our $40 billion annual investment? Well, we get 1.5 million of our own citizens incarcerated on nonviolent drug-related charges. That includes 658,000 people arrested yearly for marijuana possession only. That's not distribution, that's not growing, that is solely for possession of marijuana. Now, what happens to you once you're arrested? If it's your first arrest, you go to court. That costs you and the government money. If you're convicted, that could affect your job status, making you a less productive member of society, and obviously your hunt for any future jobs. And if you have anything else on your record, you're likely going to be serving jail time. You get sent to prison. Now, who rules prison? Prison gangs. You're forced to adapt to survive. And chances are, when you leave that prison system, you go in as a nonviolent offender and you're going to leave as a hardened criminal. I don't find the value in that process. But if we legalize, not only would we save money fighting the war on drugs and incarcerating thousands of our own citizens, but we could also make them safer. We could regulate the THC content in marijuana. We can ensure that it's not being cut with anything else, any chemicals or other drugs, and ensure the safety of the user. Now, in addition to providing safety for the user, we could tax them at the current rate that tobacco and alcohol are taxed. Now, according to ibtimes.com, this would yield approximately $46.7 billion to our economy. Now, that large influx of money to our state, local, and federal government, we could use that money and educate our youth on the dangers of drugs. So the blueprint is out there. I'll quickly show you a picture of the last state to legalize marijuana, which is Colorado. And this leads into my next point. According to CNNmoney.com, after Colorado legalized marijuana, the Colorado Budget Committee reported that after only 18 months, $610 million in revenue from commercial marijuana or retail marijuana and medicinal marijuana was earned. Of that $610 million, $184 million was taxed income. That $184 million went directly to educating our youth and supporting substance abuse and treatment programs. Colorado is currently one of 4 states where marijuana possession is legal. But the question is, how do we get the federal government to want to push and legalize it federally? One thing we can do is support legalization groups. NORML, which is an acronym that stands for the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, is one such organization. According to their website, NORML.com, they're a nonprofit organization that lobbies Congress to legalize marijuana on a federal and state level, and they also provide educational research on the effects of marijuana. Now, can you imagine if if NORML succeeds and marijuana is made legal throughout the United States? 1, we would have lower crime rates. 2, there would be less imprisoned Americans for nonviolent crimes, thus more room in our prison system for violent and dangerous criminals. 3, there would be a significant influx of money being injected into our economy. 4, there would be far less money spent on an ineffective war on drugs. And finally, all that money spent and earned, we can use to educate our young people on the risk of marijuana and other drugs, to include alcohol and tobacco. Now, in summation, I'd like to read a passage written by H.L. Mencken in reference to Prohibition in 1925. He said, "Prohibition has not only failed in its promises, but actually created additional serious and disturbing social problems throughout society. There's not less drunkenness in the Republic, but more. There's not less crime, but more. The cost of government is not smaller, but vastly greater. Respect for law has not increased, but diminished." So as Mr. Mencken said in 1925 about Prohibition, it is time for reform regarding marijuana in this country. So let's get educated, let's sign petitions, let's lobby our congressmen and congresswomen, and finally, let's vote for legalization. I'm going to attach a link to the White House petition site at the end of this speech, and I strongly urge you to click on that link and support legalization on the federal and state level. Thank you guys for listening, and I'll open it up for questions. Any questions?
Which states have legalized weed?
Whoop, say it again, sorry.
Which states have legalized weed so far?
Let's see. There's Colorado, Alaska, Oregon, and Washington are the 4 states that have legalized marijuana, legalized possession of marijuana. Anybody else?
How many people have died from marijuana?
Oh, I didn't get a chance to touch on that, but there have been 0 deaths from marijuana overdoses. No one's ever overdosed on marijuana. You'd have to smoke the equivalent of your own body weight to die from a marijuana overdose, which is physically impossible. But there's been no studies out there as far as cancer and stuff like that. Nothing that's firmly linked marijuana to cancer because it's not legal in most places. So that research hasn't had a chance to really develop yet.
Should legalization be at the state or the federal level?
I think that every state should obviously have the option and the choice whether they want to legalize it, and the federal government should allow that state the freedom. But ultimately, I think that, or my hope is that it becomes legal on the federal level. Anybody else? Any other questions?
No more.
Okay. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for listening.